Let's call this meeting to order. Commissioner Givens, would you lead the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank everyone for attending. I'm Vice Chair of the Board, Bill Elfring, Commissioner Givens on my right, and we welcome you here. This meeting is a public meeting. It is being recorded both audibly and visually by video. So keep that in mind as we proceed through our meeting. We do have a couple of items that have come in for acknowledgement that we would like to acknowledge. A thank you to our records department. A very special thank you for all your help with my passport materials and process. I received the passport in 3 weeks. All documents submitted with it were returned. Awesome. Thank you so much, Susan. And I think it's the same that sent that note. It's always nice to get letters or notes that say that our staff did good work. We actually get a lot more of those than the other kind. So, but everybody at the county is always reminded that we do have customers, and those customers deserve good service, and they provide it. A note from the Oregon East Symphony saying, on behalf of OES board staff, musicians, volunteers, patrons, a very appreciative thank you for the community development grant, which will be used for their equity strategy and strategic plan project, as fundings for our public schools is being directed towards STEM education. Funding for the arts has been greatly diminished. We have met with Eastern Oregon Business Source people, and they're aware of how much work we've been doing on a limited budget. Without corporations and businesses in Eastern Oregon, it has been in our best interest to approach grant writing as a major source for funds to carry on the youth music projects for fourth grades through seniors in high school. So they do a great job. They were recognized with a community development grant, which I think most everyone recognizes comes to us to be spent for community and economic development purposes. It comes from the taxes that are generated from the lottery and video games that are present throughout our communities. At this time, do we have minutes to be acknowledged?
We do the 9th and the...
We have minutes of the board meeting on July 9th, 2018, and the board minutes of the meeting of August 1st, 2018.
Mr. Chair, I'd move approval.
And move to approve. Second. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Are there any additions to the agenda? Thank you. Is any member of the general public here wishing to have public input to the Board of Commissioners? This would be the time to come forward if you are not already on the agenda to present today. Seeing none, we'll move on to the first item of business, which is a public hearing for the Development Code text amendment for the city of Hermiston. I call this land use hearing before the Umatilla County Board of Commissioners to order. My name is Bill Elfring. I'm the Vice Chair of the Umatilla County Board of Commissioners. Our role today is to conduct a public hearing for a post-acknowledgement plan amendment to amend the text of the future urban zoning ordinance to permit creation of a tax lot smaller than the allowed minimum parcel size, and allow for the purchase of a 1 acre tax lot for the installation of the city or public or private utility provider owned water tower. Additionally, the amendment would allow a water tower to exceed the FU10 height limitation. The Hermiston Joint Management Agreement provides that the amendments of the ordinances applicable to FU10 zone in the Hermiston urban growth area are the county's responsibility to maintain and implement. The UDC 152.751 requires an amendment to the text of the UDC and shall comply with the provisions of the Umatilla County Comprehensive Plan, the Oregon Transportation Planning Rule, the OAR Chapter 660, Division 12, the Umatilla County Transportation Plan, statewide planning goals 1, 2, and 14. I will begin by the hearing by asking staff to summarize the application. I will then ask the applicants to testify, followed by those in favor of the application. Then, if any person in opposition or who have questions or concerns will have a chance to speak. If there is opposition or questions, staff may respond to them. The commissioners also may ask staff and witnesses questions throughout the hearing until the record closes. Any person with an interest in today's agenda may offer relevant oral or written testimony, but please speak only when I identify you for that purpose. When you testify, come forward to the speaking platform there. Begin your testimony stating clearly your name and your address. If you represent someone else, please say so. If you have any questions you want to have considered, such as a copy of your testimony, photographs, petitions, or other documents or physical evidence, please hand them to me or to the staff. They'll be marked for the record. Any questions? Then I will call upon our staff for a report.
Thank you, Commissioner. Carol Johnson, Planning Department. The City of Hermiston is requesting an amendment to the future urban zone. This would allow the city to pursue a new water tower project and construct that tower in the FU10 zone in excess of the 25-foot height limitation and allow for the acreage around the tower to be divided and subsequently owned by the city. Before you are some draft findings along with new language to insert into the FU10 section 152.339. And this amendment has been heard before the County Planning Commission and was forwarded to the board with a recommendation of approval. The FU10 zone is wholly within the City of Hermiston's urban growth boundary. It only affects this zoning, and it is only allowed for the city to exceed that height limitation and partition around it as a water tower. You read in your introduction there that also there were other entities besides the city who may own or construct or use this amendment. However, that was changed at the Planning Commission, and it was struck through, and only a municipality or city would be allowed. So it's very narrow, and I'm sure that the city who is represented here today could give you more details. However, we're not specifically approving or doing anything with development today as far as a future conditional uses would allow for what they are proposing to do with this project. So I will turn that over now to the city and let them speak on behalf, and unless you have other questions.
First, a question on,
Yes.
on what you just said regarding only the city being permitted to utilize the facility. So if a utility came along that wanted to install an antenna, for example, on top or attached to the tower, that would require another hearing?
No, that would not require a hearing because the tower has already exceeded the height. That utility would still be addressed in the CUP that it would be allowable.
But only for the city use?
No, it would be whoever the city would release to.
Yes. Okay.
Anything else?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So we'll now ask for those seeking this change, proponents, to come forward and speak if they wish.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Mark Morgan with City of Hermiston. Do you need our address, too, for this?
City of Hermiston is good enough.
Okay, excellent.
You know where you are.
Yeah. Also joined today by Clint Spencer, our city planner. Your staff, Ms. Johnson, already presented most of what we've presented. We had some lengthy conversations with the Planning Commission. Ultimately, they recommended approval. Really, I'd mostly just stand for any questions. I think you're well aware of the project. So, and ultimately, I guess probably the only other thing that I would add is simply By allowing the city to subdivide down lower than 10 acres here in the FU10 zone, first off, the parent parcel that will be remaining will still be almost 10 acres. We're only taking about 1.5 acres out of that piece of property. The remainder will be about 9.5 acres remaining. And then additionally, as you're aware, up in that northeast quadrant of the city, that holds the bulk of our developable land inventory for residential development, and that's really why the FU10 zone exists, is to protect those parcels from parcelizing out too small and ultimately constricting the growth of the city out into our urban growth boundaries. So if not for these water system improvements, really it'll never be financially viable for large-scale developments to occur out in that area, essentially creating the FU10 zone as being worthless. So this is really allowing us to expand out into that FU10 zone and really fulfill the purpose for the FU10 zone in the first place.
And my understanding is that this change applies, the smaller unit applies specifically and only to this particular piece of property. Is that correct?
No, it's for the entire FU10 zone, but since it's limited to only being municipal water utilities, we're the only ones in the county that could do this because the FU10 zone only exists inside of our UGB, and we're the only city inside of our UGB. So.
Questions?
Under our state goals, goal 1 where it said citizen involvement, I was just curious, did you have a lot of folks come in to the hearing with the city and with the county? Was there quite a group?
Well, and so probably county staff could speak a little bit more to that, but since this is a county process, but at the planning commission hearing, there wasn't anybody that attended.
No. Okay, that was the only question I had.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there anyone here any further people wishing to speak in favor? Any wishing to speak in opposition? Now would be the time. Seeing none, we would ask for comments from any public agencies, and I don't see public agencies other than county and city here. So I will close the hearing and we will deliberate.
Mr. Vice Chair, I would move approval of ordinance number 2018-04 in the matter of amending Umatilla County Development Code Future Urban Zone to allow for a water tower in the city of Hermiston.
I would second that motion. Is there any discussion? Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. We will now return to the regular agenda, the janitorial services RFP. Mr. Dan Lanai.
Good morning, Commissioners. Dan Lanai, Director of Administrative Services. Our current vendor for janitorial services has been since 2010. We haven't gone out for RFP for a different janitorial provider, and we have had several issues and have asked them to correct them. And over the last 2 years, they'd come in and correct them, and then things would slide back down. And then this last time, we ran into quite a few issues where everything deteriorated in basically most of our buildings, and they didn't have enough staff to clean, or having issues getting staff and providing enough service. And we want to go out for RFP to see if we could get a local vendor, hopefully. We don't know what's going to happen there, if we're going to get another. The last 2 or 3 have been big janitorial services that come in. And we want to throw it out there to see if also some local people want to give it a shot and maybe have a little bit more pride of workmanship than the bigger businesses do with us. So we would like to go out for RFP, and in order to make it equitable for some of the smaller janitorial services, we were breaking it up. They could bid by city, by building, whatever works for them, and then we'll take a look at it and see what happens. It's kind of our thought there.
Okay. Questions?
No. Do you have any?
Nope.
Mr. Chair, I'd move approval.
Been moved to approve the authorization to issue a request for proposals for janitorial service. Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the election software purchase. Mr. Lanai, I think you're still up.
Yes, sir. The election equipment that we have, we purchased those from Lane County here 6-7 months ago. I can't remember exactly. So we bought 2 machines there for $25,000 total for both machines, and they purchased them originally for $98,000, I think, a piece. And so we got a pretty good deal there buying these, and now they have what is called electronic adjudication. So this software here it's basically you're paying the maintenance of $4,375 a year, and then there's a $1,600 training the first time that they'll come in and help train us on it. Would allow us to do online adjudication where we don't have to. Right now, when a ballot comes in, if somebody puts an X through a spot and says, I didn't mean to do that, we have to inspect every ballot to look for something like that, and then we have to stick this little sticker on there and make sure that ballot will go through the machine, because the machine won't understand that X, and they won't be able to read the writing that says, no, I didn't mean to vote for this person. So we call that enhancing the ballot, or they use pencil and they barely marked something and it doesn't show up that well. We have to take a highlighter over the top, and we have boards from each party, the Republican and Democrat. They're both examining that ballot at the same time. We have all sorts of rules there, and then they have to sign off on that. That takes a lot of process checking every ballot for that. And if they miss them, then we have to do those as they're coming through the machine. The online adjudication allows that all to be digital, so the original ballot is not changed or enhanced. So they go through and they count them without doing that inspection ahead, and it goes ahead and pops all those out and says, hey, these ones you need to look at because we're not sure about it. And then the adjudication party, the Democrat and Republican, one from both parties, it could be other parties too, it could be independent, but it has to be at least 2 different parties, would look on that on a computer screen and then would say, oh, that's what it is there. And they can do that later after the fact, after the counting's done. So this could allow us to count faster, in a sense, and then also not have to write on the ballot itself. We could do things electronically. So several of the other counties are moving this way. They're buying other equipment, bigger, expensive equipment, because this wasn't available yet. And now the software is out for this equipment that we purchased. We kind of saw that was coming, and that's one reason we went ahead and bought those devices, because we knew in the near future they were going to do that. And this is our first step to move in that direction.
So it's a totally new counting device.
We already have the counting devices, so this is just the software to allow us not to have to do all the pre-inspection enhancements to do all those to enhance the ballot. We could look at that digitally and say, oh, they didn't mean to vote for that person there. They went to this person.
So it feeds through this first.
Runs through our counting machines.
First.
Right now, they sit down, they have to make all those enhancements because they won't go through our current counting machine. Like I said, if there's an X through an oval that says, and then they write, I did not mean to vote for this person, I meant this one, we have to put a little sticker on there, cover that up. So we have to look at all 40,000 ballots to find those before we run it through the machine. Now we could run them through the machine without looking at each of those and doing that. We can do it afterwards. It'll flag, it'll say, well, you ran 40,000 ballots through. You have 1,000 of them that we're not sure about. Please look at them now. And so then we would look at those. Then instead of looking at all 40,000, you only have to look at the ones in question.
But those that would have already scored them or not?
Say that again?
Would our counting machine have already scored those ballots?
So the ones, those 1,000 in question, they're not counted at all, so those ballots are set off to the side.
Okay.
And then we would look at them, inspect them, and then they're counted. So they're not counted until, if it finds any issue, they're basically set to the side in a sense.
How many years will we get service from this machine or this program?
Well, right now, the contract is for 3 years. We're agreeing to utilize this for 3 years, and we have maintenance costs for the next 3 years, I think is the way the contract is worded.
Okay.
On that. But this is where the future is going, to digitally. It takes a picture of all the ballots, in a sense, and then you don't have to tamper, or not tamper, don't say that. you don't have to mess with the paper itself. You can look at the things digitally afterwards. So when people have questions, candidates come in, you can show them the digital copies instead of getting the original ballot out, and which makes it a lot nicer.
Very good. Questions?
Mr. Chair, I'd move approval.
On second, it's been moved and seconded to approve the purchase of a license and training for the electionware software from Election Systems and Software in the amount of $6,025, and that would include also that would include the software purchase and the training. So those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
You're still up.
The next one on the agenda is the Unitech Communications Payable. This is the last part for the new phone system. Okay. We installed the state court system, and this was the cost to do the state courts, and it's basically a pass-through because we have the contract with Unitech from the RFP, so we're installing the whole system. We added the state courts in the courthouse onto the same system to try to get their payable done before the end of the fiscal year. We pre-billed them an estimated amount of, I think it was $18,500, and this is the so we received the $18,500. We currently, the state courts owes us the remaining $3,600, which they already been invoiced, and Roy says it's in the process and that. So it's basically a pass-through of we're paying the bill, but the state courts is paying us back.
So of that 22,000, that's just passed through?
Yeah, we already received 18,000, I think 600 last fiscal year for it. So there's a remaining of $3,677, I think it is.
Okay. Mr. Chair, I'd move approval.
On second, discussion. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda.
Thank you, Commissioners.
You bet. Thank you, Dan. Law enforcement purchase of vehicles. Do we have our law enforcement here today?
And this is sort of what you have. There's not really a
Okay.
Good morning, Dave Williamson from the Sheriff's Office. I haven't actually seen the slip on this, but what we're looking to purchase this year is 4 Ford Explorer Police Interceptor packages for patrol, and 1 base model civilian Ford Explorer for the Civil Division. And we've put out an RFP earlier this summer, and based on that, we would like to make the purchase of the police interceptors from Gresham Ford, as we normally do. And the reason for that is, again, the quote does not include the window tinting that we require. They mention that they do, but going through the spec sheet, there's no mention of tinting, either factory or otherwise. I can only conclude that that's maybe an oversight, but the price that it would take to put that tinting in is going to put us up again over the amount that Gresham has quoted us. We would like to purchase the Civil Explorer from Tom Denchel and give them an opportunity so we can see exactly what the tinting they're able to provide us with and see if that would be suitable for the patrol cars as well. And then we would have that information for next year's cycle. So I guess in summary, we would like to purchase 4 of the police packages from Gresham Ford and 1 of the civilian packages from Tom Denchel Ford. The total for those, the civilian vehicle comes to $27,875, and the total of the 4 police packages is just a little over $134,000 for a total of $161,971.
So the vehicle that would be coming from Tom Denchel Ford for the Civil Division, is it under the same request provisions as the patrol vehicles as far as window tinting? So
yes.
So we'll be able to see at that particular point that they can or cannot meet the requirements
Exactly.
of that.
Exactly right.
And would they, or would you, or they, or someone clarify then whether they can, if they cannot do that, if it doesn't come with the adequate tinting, will an inquiry be made as to what the cost of adequate tinting would be?
Yes, we would like to explore that further with them.
Good. No further questions.
Dave, did they just misunderstand?
I don't think they did, but for whatever reason, it's not listed, so
The
I don't really have an
proposal sheet does say
explanation.
that it includes tinting, but it,
But the spec sheet does not. And I can't determine if it's factory tinting like they provided us with a quote for last year, which is inadequate, or if it's some sort of aftermarket that they've planned. They haven't specified that, so.
Well, this, I think, would give us an opportunity to explore purchasing locally for what the need of the department is,
Yes.
if they can meet that tinting need.
Yes,
So I think it gives us a good opportunity.
And
that was my
Gresham
thought.
Ford's off the state contract.
That is the state contract, yes.
Since you're the liaison, I'm going to let you make that.
Well, I would move to approve the purchase.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is vehicle purchase for the district attorney.
Was Dan going to be down here?
I don't know, they were notified, I haven't heard one way or the other. But basically, the county issued a request for proposal for a new mid-size vehicle for the district attorney's office. There were 3 proposals that were received. One from Legacy Ford for 2018 Ford Fusion for $19,134. One from Sherrill Chevrolet for a 2018 Chevrolet Malibu for $25,132. And from Tom Denchel Ford for 2019 Ford Fusion for $18,000. This car is replacing an Interceptor that they inherited from the sheriff's office and currently is not usable. It is in the shop with an undiagnosed problem. They can't seem to figure out what the problem is, so they're not really using it. So as a result, this is pretty crucial timing, and this was issued that you could take delivery into account, the time of delivery. And the concern for the one from Tom Denchel, it is to be ordered, and that could well exceed 120 days. The one from Legacy Ford, in following up with a phone call, they thought they could deliver it within 2 or 3 days. And so the recommendation is actually to go with the second lowest bid from Legacy Ford for the 2018 Ford Fusion for $19,134.
So just to clarify, on the Tom Denchel Ford vehicle, it's a brand new one,
It is a brand new one.
but it has repair issues,
No, the one this one's replacing.
but it would be a delivery factor
Yes, there is a delivery factor in that.
of up to
Well-
120 days, or?
And we've had experience that they've taken sometimes longer when you're ordering.
Okay.
And so that's the reason. And for the cost differential, for the immediate need, they thought for the $1,100 more that it would be better to go with the Legacy Ford.
Mr. Chair, I'd move approval of the second lowest bid because of the time element from Legacy Ford.
It's been moved to authorize the contract for purchase 2018 from Legacy Ford, $19,134. I would second that. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Next item is the purchase of a vehicle for our weed department. And I see him coming forth.
Teddy Orr, Umatilla County Weed Department. We're just looking to send out an RFP to purchase a UTV side-by-side. Currently, we have one vehicle that we use for UTV, and we do a majority of our treatments with them. And a lot of our treatments are going to more off-road use, and we have one side-by-side and one pickup, and I'm trying to limit damage to the vehicles by using the side-by-side. So that's what we're looking for to do.
Just a quick question. For my own curiosity, what's the difference between a UTV and an ATV?
ATVs are usually four-wheelers. Their capacity, what we can carry on them, is about 25 gallons. UTV is a side-by-side, so two-seater, and we can carry up to 50 depending on payload. We can get a bigger payload and do more work with them.
Okay. It's the first time I'd seen UTV, so I just had to ask. Questions?
Nope. Mr. Chair, I'd move approval.
Move approved. Second. Discussion. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is a park grant. Mr. Fellows.
Good morning. Tom Fellows, Public Works Director. Basically what we have here is we're applying for a grant from Oregon State Parks, and what the grant's going to do is put in one more vault toilet up at Harris Park. One of the requirements of the grant is that we get the board approval, the board's consent to this. It actually gets us more points towards possibly receiving the grant. So really what we're asking for is a board acknowledgement, that they stand with us on this and for moving forward with the grant application.
I'd move approval, Mr. Chair.
Been moved to approve the grant application. As I would second that. Discussion. Seeing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Next item is a culvert purchase.
Yes, what this is currently we have a bridge located on Pumpkin Center Road. It's a wooden structure. It passes canal water. It's part of the irrigation program down in Hermiston. I don't remember which district it is now, but and what we're proposing to do is replace that wooden structure with an aluminum box culvert. A couple of things that will come with that is longevity. We feel that the box culvert will give us a much better life than replacing a wooden structure with the wooden structure. The last work that was done on that structure was about 20 years ago, and so we expect that an aluminum box culvert is going to get us upwards of 50 years, possibly even into that 75-year neighborhood before we'd have to perform any other work to it again. So what we're asking for is permission to go out for RFPs for an aluminum box culvert to replace that bridge on Pumpkin Center Road.
Is there any difference in the weight-bearing capacity of an aluminum culvert versus a wooden structure?
I can't answer that off the top of my head. I could certainly research that. All of the information that we've received is that an aluminum box culvert, the size that we're looking at, would not have any limitations on weight, on capacity that would do that. But the comparison with the wood structure versus the aluminum box, I can't answer that question.
But overall, we get longer service out of the aluminum box.
Yeah, we feel that it's going to give us a better service life.
Any noticeable change in the road bed as far as smoothness?
The road surface will be the profile of the road grade change there should be no grade change at all at that location.
Tom, they used to do concrete box. How do those compare?
Concrete structures tend to be more money, and they're more difficult to install. With our research on this aluminum structure, we feel that we should be able to remove the old structure, assemble and install the new structure, and have the road open within a couple of weeks. With the concrete boxes, you're not only more money, but you're going to be more time. And quite honestly, even with the wooden structure, it's more labor intensive, and we'd probably have that road closed maybe up to a month. So
what's the time span lifespan difference?
Of the concrete versus the aluminum?
Yeah.
My personal opinion is the concrete's going to give you a longer lifespan than the aluminum, obviously. But we haven't cost that out as to what that would be in comparison.
Okay. That's all I had.
That's all I've got to
Hey, Mr. Chair, I'd move approval.
move approval of the to authorize issuance of an invitation for bid for purchase of aluminum box culvert. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. You're still up for a purchase.
Yes, thank you. This wasn't one of our better days this summer. One of our motor graders experienced some engine difficulty in that it put a connecting rod right through the side of the block. So, and being our summer season and our heavy work season, we took it to Caterpillar as a customary type of an operation, and the motor was absolutely not salvageable. And so the replacement of the engine in that motor grader, the original bill was $38,622. Bob Noy has had some conversation with Caterpillar, and we've actually got that number reduced a little bit, a few $1,000s. I don't have that exact amount with me right now, but that just happened in the last day or two. So it will be less than the $38,000, but it's still a significant chunk of change, which meant that we needed to come before the board for approval for payment.
Do they put a new warranty on the motor?
I believe the motor is warranted. I don't know what the length of the warranty is, but yes, the motor will have some warranty on it.
And I take it that the old one was not.
Yeah, the old one was not.
Is that one of our older graders?
It is unfortunately, it is one of the graders that was off from warranty. Our goal at some point here is to get all of our grader fleet back in warranty, and do some upgrades. That's part of our plan moving forward, since we got the additional money through the House Bill 2017, the State Highway Fund increase. And so we're going to start moving towards upgrading our fleet and trying to get back in warranty so that we don't have these issues of high dollar repairs.
I have nothing.
Mr. Chair, I would move approval of the request to do the payable to Western States Equipment for up to $38,622.07 for the replacement of a grader engine. Hopefully it'll be less.
I would second the motion. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You know, we used to take just a grease rag and stick in those holes on some of our old tractors.
We had to skid it on the lowboy with the V6, so it was
Grease rag wouldn't hold it.
pretty locked up.
Next item on the agenda, Statewide Transportation Fund Committee. Mr. Walder.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Bob Walder, Planning Director. Before you is a request to adopt order number BCC 2018-062. As part of the Statewide Transportation Improvement Fund, the Oregon Administration rules direct qualifying entities, which Umatilla County is one, to appoint an advisory committee which would be responsible for carrying out the purposes of the STIF program. And so for your consideration today, we would ask that you consider establishing the STIF Advisory Committee, appointing 7 members. We've received applications from 7 individuals, and then adopting bylaws for the committee. We did receive a diverse pool of applicants representing a variety of communities across the county. And we were also able to meet the requirements of the OAR, which require membership to include at least one member who represents the following groups: low-income individuals, individuals age 65 and older, or people with disabilities, and public transportation service providers. So we've met all three of those mandatory requirements of the rules, and they also represent other diverse interests that are required for the committee to be established.
And did they self-apply or were they nominated?
They all self-applied. We sent out an application back in July, and it was available on the website. We had a couple jurisdictions recommend individuals, but ultimately the individuals applied themselves.
And how did you arrive at the bylaws? What was the process for that?
Yeah, so the Department of Transportation sent out a template, and we originally had developed our own set of bylaws, and so after the fact they had sent out that template, so I took the two documents and made sure we met all the minimum requirements that ODOT had included in their bylaws, and then any additional items that the county were specific to the county, like number of members that you guys recommended, or term limits, things like that, which we have for all of our communities, or all of our committees, which is we try to stick to 4-year term limits.
I know it's not part of the order, but have you established a date for the first meeting of this committee?
I plan to do some outreach to the committee members and see what works for them. I would like to see them meet early September so we can at least, make sure they're satisfied with the bylaws and see if they have any recommended amendments, and then start determining, our process for solicitation of projects.
So it's pretty well determined that we won't meet the September deadline for grant application?
The deadline's November 1st.
November 1st.
So we don't know if we'll be able to meet that or not. It depends on several factors, including, the availability to the committee and how many projects we receive, things like that. So we'll probably know a little bit more about which round of funding we're going to make once we're able to convene the group. Of course, the other option is waiting till April to submit our STIF plan.
And a question for Doug, is there a specific term length?
Well, it is 4 years. The way the order is drafted, though, that there are 3 that they'll stagger the terms, so they only have 2-year terms initially, but eventually it'll be 4 years, and then they're all term limited to 2 terms.
2 terms.
Yeah, we wanted to avoid a situation where everyone's term ended at the same time, so that's the reason for staggering.
Mass exodus. I have no other.
Have we had any inquiries yet of projects?
We have not. I know there's several entities that are, positioning themselves probably to apply for funds. And also we've, we have several plans. One of those is the Umatilla Morrow County travel shed analysis. So those plans make recommendations, which I believe those public transit providers will probably use those plans to help identify projects that they're interested in.
Okay. Mr. Chair, I'd move approval of order number BCC 2018-062.
Motion to approve the adoption of order BCC 2018-062. I would second that. Further discussion. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners.
And we have a hearing.
We do have a public hearing coming on the next issue. Next issue is Employment Ordinance Amendment. This will be the second reading of that amendment, and we will now proceed with the hearing. I would call the hearing to order and call for a staff report.
Okay. Thank you. This is first read on July 9th, 2018. There have not been any changes since the first reading. It is now before the board for second reading and potential adoption. This is basically to update the criminal history record check policy of the county to comply with its practice as well as the legal requirements. The county had been complained legally, however, the policy was a little bit outdated, so it has now been updated to conform.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone wishing to speak in favor? Anyone wishing to speak opposed? We'll close the hearing then and deliberate the matter. This adoption will enact the ordinance.
Yes.
Standard updates. Mr. Chair, I would move adoption of ordinance number 2018-03.
And adoption of ordinance 2018-0. I guess that's the same thing. We have two motions on the same ordinance.
No, just
Double check
one.
what happened here.
We have part one, part two here. That's what I'm wondering.
One was to do the hearing, and then one is to adopt it.
Very
so
good.
You're in, yeah.
Those in favor of adopting ordinance 2018-03 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Next item is property tax foreclosures.
This is part of the annual foreclosure process for delinquent property taxes. Within the next month, the tax collector will be filing the action to initiate the foreclosure, and as part of that, the notice will be published in a local newspaper, and the order would be to designate the East Oregonian as that paper.
Okay. Do we have any indication as to whether there are foreclosures or how many there might be?
Yes, the list is actually attached to the Pinky.
Oh, in this book,
It's
okay.
probably, I think, at this point, I mean, it will go down about 60.
Okay. Discussion? Or let me close.
Is this more than we've had in the past years, Paul?
Yeah. They start out, and then usually by the time the process winds down to a judgment, it's usually down to probably about 50, and then, of course, by the time the 2 years redemption up, you're probably down to like 3 or 4 properties.
This starts the time clock
Yes.
running on those properties.
Yes.
Many folks respond not wanting their name published in the paper, so they'll do the due diligence to make it go away.
Okay. Mr. Chair, I would move approval.
Move approval to adopt order TX 2018-02. Discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Sale of property.
Okay. This is coming before the board. Earlier, the tribe had approached the county to purchase a piece of property that was foreclosed on for delinquent property taxes. There was some discussion at that point, and the tribe, I think, was willing to pay, I think, $52,000. Since that time, they've done a lot book report, and in order to get title insurance, there will be some exceptions to the title. And with those exceptions, they're asking for the price to be reduced to $40,000.
The title's troubled.
It's no more trouble than any other tax foreclosed property. Title companies have an issue with the process in Oregon, the way the tax foreclosures are handled, and as a result, they do not like issuing title insurance on these separate properties. They normally say you have to wait 10 years before they would actually insure it.
Doug, if we did not take their offer, what are our other alternatives?
We would probably put it up through the auction process. And in this piece of property, I believe, is at the real market value about $57,000. And so that's what we'd do, and if probably more than likely it wouldn't sell, and so then we'd get a reduced amount. down to, 15% of that, so it probably would be a lesser amount.
Yeah, this isn't what it's worth, but it's probably the best offer we're going to get.
Paul, would you weigh in on this for us?
I just saw the Pinky yesterday, so I'm not exactly sure the positioning. Is it inside the reservation boundary?
Paul, for the record.
Oh, sorry, Paul Chalmers, Director of Assessment and Taxation for Umatilla County.
This is up Escalpa Creek.
Oh, okay.
Piece of property.
Yeah, so being inside the reservation boundaries, I mean, it's going to be some restricted activity, I would venture to say. So certainly this might be the best cash flow from a property standpoint.
It won't gain us anything in taxes because the tribes will have purchased it for.
Yeah, especially if it goes into trust.
Yeah.
And that's
almost certain that's what will take place.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, might take the money and run. Well, I'd like to request that it could be used for, not just kidding.
That'll be another matter for another meeting. I would move that we accept the price of $40,000 from CTUIR on the property in view of the fact that the title insurance is not very clear on it, and probably will be the best offer we get.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Those in further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Next item on our agenda is the forest plan. Larry, you want to take that one?
Sure.
Having been more directly involved?
For the record, here we are looking at the forest plan. We've received a letter from the Forest Service. We also received a copy of the plan. We have spent upwards of 20 years, not quite 20 years, dealing with the plan. When I reported back to the Board of Commissioners and we discussed it in our staff meeting, public meeting, the agreement was we would wanted to accept it and support the plan and not get into filing objections. With that being said, comments?
I've looked at the summaries of it. I haven't read all the number of pages, about a foot thick of it. The summary of it appears to me that it gives a tip of the hat to all interests in some respect. Those who are on one side receive some, those on the other side receive some. Nobody in this plan received everything they wanted. So there's still some objection out amongst the parties, and there will be objections filed to it. My feeling on the forest plan is that, like most agreements, if nobody's totally satisfied, it must be a pretty good agreement. Particularly when you're talking about advocates for use of the forest versus those who advocate total conservation of the forest. Neither are satisfied, but I think it's overall probably a decent approach.
And that's exactly right. It was a compromise. The goal was that this would be a multi-use plan, that it would last for the next 10 years, I believe, maybe 15 is, can't remember the exact timeline. One of the big things that we hear nowadays because of all the fires is if we had better management of our federal lands, we wouldn't have these fires. Well, this plan actually has doubled, a little bit more than doubled, the amount of timber harvest that we have now, and it's also doubled the grazing allotment. But it's also set aside recreational areas. So with a multi-use plan, they've tried to hit every possible area that our federal lands, forest lands are used. So with that being said, Mr. Chair, I would move approval of supporting the plan and for the board not to take a stand on filing objections or supporting objections that are filed.
I would second that, and I would also add that the principal concern from those forest users that I've heard so far is that there are no guarantees in the plan that those allocations and so on would be met. My feeling is that's a matter that would need to be addressed at the time when they aren't being met.
Right.
I've found so far, at least locally, the Forest Service to be very receptive and to be very communicative. I think it ushers in a new era, particularly of communication, and that's something that's been needed for quite some time.
And they have been great to work with as far as trying to be communicative, trying to accommodate the public and other entities for meetings. I would note that there have already been lawsuits filed by environmental groups on the parts of the forest plan that are currently in effect, and also on some of the other federal things, the WOTUS, the Waters of the U.S., that now has a lawsuit filed that they bring it back for consideration.
And I understand the judge has rendered his decision to do that.
Yes.
So we have a motion before us to approve the plan?
To
Accept the plan.
The plan and not take any action in objecting or supporting objections.
Okay. All right, that motion has been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Commissioner reports.
Did we have an executive session we were supposed to talk about?
Not that much, perfect.
Okay, I have a meeting tomorrow in Hermiston relating to my county car. And then I will be gone again today. They're wanting to double check their cutting ability on my nose.
Well, our sympathies go with you for that.
As long as
Certainly.
they don't want to cut more.
Just a couple of notes. I heard on the radio this morning that Echo Schools are dedicating their new school addition, which adds some 30,000 square feet, as reported, and that's our commendations to them for that. Congratulations to them. Milton Free Water is meeting Friday? Tomorrow evening. So new school facilities on all ends of the county. That's great. We have a charter review. The charter review committee is still working on reviewing the charter.
And it'll be held in Stafford Hansel building in Hermiston.
In Hermiston this next time.
Night.
Okay. Yeah, tomorrow night.
Yes.
Very good. With that, if there's no further business, we'll stand adjourned.